Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead, my weekend project, setting up my compost station so I can have plenty of compost for next year. I got the garden built, now I'm building a place for really composting all my leaves and grasses, weeds, garden debris. So today's video is really about the principles of composting, give you some ideas of what you might want to set up. Please subscribe. I'm going to be doing future videos on what greens are, what browns are, what your nitrogens, carbons are, how do you set up hot composting and use all this. But today I just want to go over the basic idea of setting up a station. So right here, this is my catch-all area. I've just been throwing in stuff from the garden in the yard in here, and this will slowly break down, probably over 6 or 12 months. It's called cold composting. Nothing's heating up in there. It's just a slow, normal, natural breakdown. And you can see right in there that the pumpkin's molding. There's some insects flying around. You can see the tomato seeds actually starting to grow in there. This will all break down over time. Coming over here, I have my barrels, which I will be using, and I'll be moving these probably just over here to the other side. This is a great way to make compost quickly. You put in the right amounts of greens, which is nitrogen, the right amount of browns, which is carbon. Give it a spin every couple of days. This breaks down quickly. You get compost quickly, and it can be done, you know, within sometimes 4 weeks or so. That's just for getting stuff started quickly. The main area is going to be built out of these pallets. I think I got about 30 of them. They were free. I have a friend who oversees a Girl Scout troop, and this is what the cookies came on. So the principle, and then we'll get to building this, I'll show you more of the technical stuff. The principle here is we're going to hot compost. That means it's going to be a layer of browns, carbons, layer of greens, nitrogen, carbons, nitrogen, all the way up. Make a nice big pile. I'm going to make a space in here that's about twice as big as this. That's where the main pile of materials is going to go. That's going to heat up if it goes well. In about a week's time, I'm going to want to flip it, turn it. You want to keep turning it at least once a week to keep the process going. You take all the materials that are on the outside of the pile, move them into the center. The center is what heats up, and it can heat up anywhere on a low if it's going okay at 100, 120 degrees. It's going really well, 140, 160. You want that heat. That's what's going to break this down really in a month to 2 months' time. So we're going to start with the pile here. That's where I'm going to build the pile. After a week, I flip it into here. It's going to break down some more. After a week, I flip it and put it into here. After another week, I flip it, put it into there, and by this time, it should be close to being compost for the garden, fully broken down, and this is where I will be pulling my compost down. So this is going to be the station along the back side of this garden, away from the house so my wife doesn't see it and she's happy. And we're going to just work from the left all the way down to the right. So again, the main pile is going to go right here. I'm going to move these barrels out, and then I'm going to put 2 more collection areas just like that, made out of 3 pallets, where I will collect greens and browns. That will build the pile, and then I work my way down. All right, let's get to building up and setting up this whole area. So here's my finished compost station. You don't have to make something this large. This is a finished bin. We're going to go down to the left and I'll show you how I got to this, and I'll describe the build as we go along. You may only want to use 2, and the reason you want to use 2 is because if you're doing hot composting, about at least once a week, you want to flip your material from one side to another side, aerate it, mix it up, and then you would go back again. Hot composting, if you're lucky, it'll be done in 4 weeks, but you know, about 8 weeks is typical. I put a space between mine so that I can walk in and actually tend what might be growing behind here. I'm going to be using this fence, and this also keeps the deer away. But you could put these closer together. You don't have to do a space in between unless you want to. So let's start at the beginning. This is basically where I'm going to hold my greens or my nitrogens on the left, my browns or my carbons on the right. This is just a 3 pallet setup. I don't need to get into here, so there is no space. And I decided to put these up horizontally because I think the material will fall out less set up this way. It also is nice to use pallets because it lets air flow through. Getting oxygen into your pile is really important. That's why we're going to be flipping it every week to a different area. By turning these vertically, you end up with the larger post, being horizontal, and it's just 1 screw, 2 screw, 3 screw, 4 screw, secures it together. 4 is the minimum. You might need more. Each pallet's going to vary. You get about a 4 foot by 4 foot space. And just to show you real quick, this is what I'll be growing behind them. So I may have tomato plants, may have different fruit plants, but the deer, as you get down further, you see how they strip out anything that grows on the outside of the fence. Right in here is going to be my main compost pile. This is where I'm going to assemble the browns and the greens. And if you subscribe to my channel, I'll talk to you about how you do it, how you get the heat going, how you take care of it. Instead of putting the pallets there, because I'm going to make a large pile, the bigger the pile, the bigger the pile, the better it really supports heating up in the center. So you don't want your initial pile to be too small. So I just decided to leave this space open so that I could build a large pile, get the heat going in the core, and there was really no need to frame it out. So once this is set up and going, in about a week's time, I'm going to turn it. I'm going to take the core out. That's where the heat generates. If you're lucky, you know, you'll get 100, 120 degrees on the low end. If you're doing really well, you're going to heat your compost. You're going to have your compost pile going at 140, 160 degrees. In about a week's time, I'm going to take out the center because that's what's going to be most broken down. I'm going to flip it over, aerate it, get oxygen into it, and put it in here. So this is how I started building these 3 stations. Again, if you just want to use 2 and go back and forth, you can do that. So these are 1 by 3 by 8s cut in half. You're going to need 2 per compost bin, and this is a 1 by 4 by 8. It looks like this. And you're going to need 1 to set up the facing, and you're going to need 4 to create the panel out here. I'll show you that at the end. And basically what we're doing is you're going to put down a strip of the 1 by 3, then we're going to put the facing on, and this is going to be a place where we drop boards down and we work our way up, and it creates the front part of the compost bin. It keeps stuff from spilling out. To set it up, you put your strip right there. Another strip is going to go here, and that's to keep the board from falling inward. And this is what it looks like. So you have 1 strip right there. The other strip goes straight down. Here's the gap where this board, cut in half, will fit right into here like that, and you can just drop it down and you start building the front of your panel. So as you add in more compost, you'd want to raise that up. A couple of tips is you want to make sure that the front part comes up far enough to keep the board in place. Same thing with this back piece. You don't want the board falling out, and you want to make sure you don't make this gap so wide that a board on top here may slip down in front of it. And when you measure it, when you measure this board, it's really important, let's see if I can do this, is you measure it to 1 post, and then coming over here, leave a gap, because you don't want it to be post to post, or it's going to be hard to drop this in. This is enough gap that when you drop it down here, it just slides to the bottom and it's perfectly fine. So you're going to need 4 of the 1 by 4 by 8s to create a wall just like this. And you would just add these as you need to. This is going to be where my finished compost goes. So potentially I'll be storing this up over time, and I'm going to need to raise this wall as high as it can go. Hopefully I have that much compost. And again, you can set this up just with 1 bin if you want to kind of cold compost, or you're just going to, you know, pull it out, turn it, put it back in. You could do that. You don't need to use all the space. You could just go with 2, and you can just move your compost left to right, right to left. And again, you want to do that about every week when you're hot composting, just to fluff it up, keep the oxygen in there. You want oxygen in there. That really keeps the process going. So I'm going to use the 3 stations. I'm going to start with a large pile here. About every week, move it into the next bin. I may have to turn it one time or so inside of there if I need to. And that's all really going to be based on how much green you put in there, how much nitrogen, how much carbon you have in there, your zone, temperatures, all kinds of stuff. Hope this gives you some idea of how to build compost bins, adapt them to your need. This is a larger station that I can really start from over here with the barrels to the left, cold composting right there in the pen, and then I'm going to start my hot composting process and go all the way down there. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.